Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Dr. Peru here. Today, let's talk about the number one best probiotic for autoimmune conditions. So, the question is, what is an autoimmune condition? It's a condition where your own immune system is attacking its own tissues. What's really happening with the immune system is that we have two parts of it that are out of balance. We either have a very low amount of something called regulatory T cells, and at the same time, we have high amounts of other immune cells. All you really need to know about Treg cells and autoimmune disorders, to make this simple, is that these Treg cells prevent autoimmune diseases. So it's all about calming down the inflammation after your immune system has done its job. The T cells turn off the inflammation. Treg cells are responsible for an appropriate response, but the problem is that sometimes it can get out of control and attack the wrong thing. The best way to understand this is to look at a thermostat. Autoimmune diseases are like a thermostat running too hot. There's too much inflammation. The question is, how do we take an autoimmune disease and bring it to an optimal level? It just so happens that there's a natural way to do this, but I think it's important to understand the root cause of autoimmune disease. The root problem of all autoimmune diseases is inflammation in the gut. Sometimes you don't initially feel it, but inflammation blocks the function of vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 cannot work in the presence of inflammation. Vitamin D influences over 2,500 genes and is involved in every part of the immune system. So, if the Treg cells do not get enough vitamin D, they can't work, grow, or function properly. This leads to vitamin D deficiency, which affects immune system function. Many people, including a lot of doctors, don't realize that we have such a widespread problem with low vitamin D. There is a condition called vitamin D resistance, which occurs at the cell level, specifically at the receptors for vitamin D3. You see, you can test someone's vitamin D levels in their blood, and they might appear perfectly normal. However, if they have vitamin D resistance, despite having normal blood levels, they'll still be extremely deficient. Many people don't realize that the vast majority of the population is vitamin D resistant. When they test for vitamin D in your blood, they are testing for the inactive version. They're not testing for what's happening at the cell level. The vitamin D you need for immune system function is more like 8,000 to 10,000 IU per day just to maintain it. And not only that, you need it on a daily basis. Rarely is anyone getting that amount unless they're getting a lot of sun or taking a supplement. So, if you compound an inflammatory gut problem with low vitamin D, it's a perfect storm for developing an autoimmune disease. On top of that, you might have doctors, or you might see things in the news or online, saying that you need to be careful with vitamin D and that you don't want to become toxic. Just so you know, it's extremely rare, and you would have to take hundreds of thousands of international units every single day for months before you develop any toxicity. So, when we're talking about 10,000 IU, we're not even close to being in the ballpark of toxicity. The reason I'm even bringing that up is that to penetrate through the vitamin D resistance that so many people have and to create a therapeutic effect, you're going to need to use levels that are much higher than 10,000 IU. You're probably going to have to go up to 20,000, 30,000, or even 40,000 to 50,000 IU every single day to break through that resistance and create an effect on the Treg cells. So, that's number one. Number two, missing gut health and the immune system. You have thousands of different species of microbes in your gut, and they do a lot more than you might think. There are two specific microbes that are involved in helping prevent autoimmune diseases by greatly affecting the Treg cells as well as suppressing these other inflammatory immune cells. The first one is called Bifidobacterium infantis, or infantis, depending on pronunciation. This microbe helps develop our nervous system and is highly sensitive to antibiotics, steroids, junk foods, and many things in the environment. What I'm saying is that about 70% of the population is missing this microbe, and it's very important for supporting Treg cell function. Lactobacillus reuteri is another key microbe, and unfortunately, it too is very sensitive to broad-spectrum antibiotics. 97% of the population is missing this microbe as well. The cool thing about L. reuteri is that it helps increase the hormone called oxytocin, which is one of the most potent anti-stress hormones. Now, why is that important? When we're stressed, we have high levels of cortisol, which suppresses the immune system. Normally, we should have around 35 billion white blood cells. These are the soldiers that do all the work, but when exposed to cortisol, this suppresses the entire immune system. Think about what happens when you take prednisone for autoimmune diseases. What is prednisone? It's a steroid, a synthetic version of cortisol, which shuts down the entire immune system. It also shuts down the healing part of the immune system. This is why people who have had too many steroid shots often destroy their joints, as it acts like an antibiotic. Vitamin D is not an immune suppressant that shuts the whole system down. It only targets the parts that are overactive. So, this microbe helps cool things down, but it has a bigger effect over the entire immune system. I don't recommend just taking Reuteri as a pill. I recommend cultivating it with a dairy product to increase its levels, which will help heal the small intestine and, in turn, build up the Treg cells. So, number 1, vitamin D is essential. Number 2, reestablish the microbes that are usually missing. And number 3, selenium and autoimmune disorders. Now, what does selenium do? Well, it's a trace mineral that you only need in small amounts. I would recommend about 200 micrograms, not milligrams. Selenium has a unique function for the immune system. If you're low in selenium, you'll have higher amounts of these inflammatory cells, and remember, in autoimmune diseases, these cells are already too high. So, we need to lower them. Selenium helps lower these two cells, and it also helps lower autoantibodies, which are involved in the self-attack where your immune system is attacking itself. Selenium can help turn that down. You can take it as a supplement as well. The last point I want to bring up is prolonged fasting. When you do prolonged fasting, you can greatly increase Treg cells. There are a lot of people who are reducing inflammation by doing periodic prolonged fasting. I'm talking about fasting for 3 days at a time. You're not eating anything, just drinking water, but no food. This can greatly improve your immune system to the point where you can create new stem cells to build up your immune system. So, these 3 things, vitamin D, restoring missing microbes, and selenium, are the most important steps to help shift this very hot immune system problem and bring it back to an optimal temperature. This will help put the autoimmune disease into remission. This is all for today. I hope you liked the video. If you do so, do not forget to subscribe the channel.